Hey, you guys, welcome to another episode of Tuesday Talk, the podcast. Of course, I am your host, Coach K. Jones, and it is February, you guys. It's already February, and you've heard me talk about it before, especially on the last episode. February is going to be the All About Love segment, okay? So every guest that I have lined up for February is going to be extremely insightful. So as always, you want to grab your notebook, grab your pens, and you want to take notes. So the first guest that I have with us for February today is Pastor Marvin St. Macary, y'all. He is the executive pastor at the Ram Church. He's an author. He is a co-owner of the Saint Collection clothing apparel. First of all, y'all going to catch me in a sweatshirt and a hat very soon. He is a husband and he is also a father. Pastor Marvin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming to share space with us. We are excited to hear your insight. Of course, with the All About Love segment and you being a husband, like the male perspective is so important, especially in a space like this where a majority of the listeners are women. So first, if you will, just share a little bit about yourself, your story. Everybody has a story.
All right. Well, if we start, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I'm a New York City guy. I had passion to work in the entertainment industry. So when I was about 19 years old, I was an intern for P. Diddy at Bad Boy Entertainment. That led for me to work for a director named Hype Williams in LA. So for about 7 years, so I moved to LA about 21. I was living in that industry, working on a lot of music videos, casting and producing music videos. And during that time, I met a gentleman by the name of Derek Monroe. Derek Monroe would invite me to go to church with him. Sometimes I would go.
Derek. He used to do my hair when I first moved here to Lynchburg.
Okay, back at that location in Alta
Like
Vista.
in Alta Vista,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I met him. He was doing the hair of a girl I was dating at the time, and he would invite me to go to Bible study with him. So I would go to sometimes I didn't, but he would always stay on me about getting my life right with God.
Yeah.
And I ended up quitting that industry. I just had a moment where I felt like I'm becoming somebody that I don't recognize within that industry. That industry can get caught up in all kinds of things, and drugs and women and partying and all of that.
Yeah.
So I was out there, and so I moved back to New York. I'm trying to figure out what's next in my life. And he told me, come visit the Ram Church. And he said, I promise you that if you come, God will give you a sense of direction for the next phase of your life. And I did about 18 years ago, something like that. I came to visit. I met at the time Pastor Younger. And I remember when it was time to leave Lynchburg, I felt like I was leaving something. And one day I heard it clearly where God said, move to Lynchburg. And I moved here probably 6 months after. I didn't know I would be here this long. I thought it was just going to be for a season. And I ended up, finding my wife here, finding my purpose here. I became an assistant pastor at the Ram Church. Never had a desire to be a pastor, to preach. In fact, come April, it'll be 10 years that I've been a pastor here.
Man, first of all, I think it's so funny that you said you didn't know you would be here in Lynchburg this long, because I feel like everybody who has moved to Lynchburg has had like that same story.
Say the same thing, right?
Me, like moving here in the 10th grade, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna graduate high school and then I'm going back to DC. And that's just what it's gonna be. Fast forward, here we are years later. I moved here in 2009, so we're in 2024 and I'm still here.
Wow, right.
Yeah. And every time I hear your story, it just amazes me how God will find you exactly where you are and use everyone that comes in your path to help you find your next, just like Bishop preached yesterday at service. And so going from like the music industry and executive producing, like in all those things, to being the executive pastor at the Ram Church, and meeting your wife. Okay, so when did your wife come into play? Like, how did that happen?
So I actually met her on my second trip to Lynchburg.
Okay,
so this was after that first trip, way before I moved, she was Bishop Younger's assistant at the time. I think she started she became his assistant when she was 17. She came here for Liberty University and joined the Ram Church. We met at IHOP, and she does not remember this at all. At all. It was me, Bishop, and her having breakfast. I thought she was cool. I thought she was pretty, but my mind wasn't on that.
Yeah.
I actually came from a crazy relationship, so I decided for a year I was not going to date at all.
Man.
But that's when I met her on my second trip here.
On your second trip here. And then from there, so it wasn't a whole like love at first sight type of thing, because you said you weren't even focused on that.
No, I mean, I saw a beautiful young lady, for sure. Right. But after that, I was like, no, I'm here for business, not business, but I'm here. I'm here to get my life right. I'm here to be serious about what God has for me. So
yeah, I can't be having no distractions. So you gonna have
to have no distractions,
right here.
Right.
So then how did you go from that in that moment? It's like, you're beautiful, but I'm here. I don't need no distractions. Like, I'm focused. I'm not even worried about it. To, yeah, let's get married.
Oh, right. So, okay, probably 3 or 4 years after. But through that, we were friends. We were friends. Yeah. I would hang out with her roommates. A bunch of us would hang out. Sometimes I'd even stop by her job and say what's up.
For business. I'm just saying, hey, passing through.
Yeah.
Right. So, got you.
We built a friendship. We built a real good friendship to the point where she can talk about other guys to me. I was in that friend zone, I guess. I don't know. Just one random day, I said, I'm gonna ask out. I'm gonna ask out to go to the movies, and okay, this was not very smooth. I'll be honest. So I asked her.
That's how you know it's real.
I asked her to go to the movies with me, but it was a few people around, so she thought it was gonna be like the whole group was going.
Oh, she really did have you friend zone. She said y'all were going on like a group friend trip.
A group friendship, so exactly.
Funny. Go ahead, Miss Ashley.
Exactly. So that Friday night, I get to the movie theater. She doesn't show up. So I call her and I'm like, hey, what happened? And she's like, oh, I didn't take it serious. I know a lot of us are going and you won't miss me. And I was like, nah, I was actually just you. And she said, oh, really? I said, yeah. So let's try again tomorrow. So the next day she showed up. And at the time I had a mentee who I was with all day long. So he came with me.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I don't even know what I was thinking or what, but he didn't sit with us. He actually found a friend and sat with a friend. But I did bring my mentee on our first, I guess, date.
That is so funny because the whole time Lady Ashley stood you up. So actually, y'all could have your own movie time. It sounds like she was. Oh, that was so great. That's classic. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
We went to go see Not Easily Broken with Kevin Hart and I think Taraji P. Henson and Morris Chestnut. And we had a great time, but it was the second day. So that was Saturday. That Sunday evening, we got on the phone and we talked for hours.
Yeah.
And it was in that conversation where I said she could be my wife.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I can't tell you what a specific thing she said. It was just a feeling that I felt like, yeah, this is my wife.
Yeah. And you said that, but that was like months after you moved there?
Years
after you moved there. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you said about 3-4 years after you moved there.
Yeah.
So was marriage like always a thing for you? Like, was it something that you grew up witnessing, like your parents, or is it something that you always desired? Let me say.
I always desired marriage, but I didn't have healthy marriages in front of me.
Okay, so even being in the music industry, you still desired marriage?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't always pursuing marriage at the time, but I always knew I wanted to be married one day. I wanted what I thought marriage was, Yeah. Even though, my parents were separated since I was like 5 years old. I didn't have a lot of healthy marriages to model after or to see besides probably the Cosby Show.
Okay, Cosby Show, yes.
And we can't even talk about that now.
I know, right?
But but God always placed this desire in me. Even though I didn't see it, I always felt like it's something I wanted.
Yeah. So then even not having like the healthy marriages modeled, um, you were still able to, okay, so what was your view or what did you think that love and marriage was back then versus what you know now? Like, how has it shifted?
I definitely would have said marriage is probably like the rom-com where every day is perfect.
Mm,
Two people meet, they just magically fall in love, and you know, it's life happily ever after. You know,
man, fairy
um,
tale.
yeah. What I found out is that marriage is a decision, and that yes, emotion plays a part of it, a big part of it, especially in the beginning. But it's not just on emotion, because some days, you know, Mr. T.D. Jakes said this. He said, "Some days I go home and I can't wait to go see my wife." You
Yeah.
know, and there's some days I go home just because I live there.
That's real though.
so, so some days, you know, it's perfect. It's love Jones, you know. And then some
Mhm.
days it's you get on my nerves. I still love you,
Yeah,
but because I made this decision, no matter how much you get on my nerves, I'm still coming home. You know,
exactly.
we're still gonna pray together before we go to bed, and we're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I discovered is that um, marriage, like life, is going to be a reflection of life. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, and you don't quit at the downs. You know,
Yeah. You
yeah.
make the commitment to actually keep going and make the commitment
Mm-hmm.
to work through it. And I think that's where a lot of people are missing it. I guess like in today's generation, not even just with marriage, but just relationships in general, they think that when they find their person or they feel like they found their person, that it's going to be perfect. And at the first onset of it not being perfect, or that first argument or those disagreements, or you find something that you dislike about the person, like you realize they chew really loud and you can't stand that. Now all of a sudden,
Right.
it's like, yeah, this ain't gonna work.
This ain't gonna work. Right.
As opposed to, is this something, that I actually can work through? Is it my pride? Is it my ego? Am I looking for this perfect person? Would you say, oh, that was another question I had, and I'm gonna have to circle back to that
Mm-hmm.
because I forgot it.
Okay.
However, however, so then what would you say, like being married, what is the most challenging part about being married? And well, how long have you been married, you said?
We'll be 13, no, 14. Wow, 14 years in
Oh
May.
my goodness, 14
Yeah,
years.
14 years in
Oh,
May.
in May? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's my
May
marriage anniversary
30th. Yeah,
too.
May 30th.
Ours is May 22nd.
Wow, okay.
Yep, our anniversary May 22nd, and we'll be going on, oh man, our fourth year. Excuse me, third year. 30, oh Jesus. Yeah. So we'll be going on our third year, May 22nd.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations to you too.
Thank
So
you.
14 years of marriage, what would you say then is the most challenging part about being married? And then what is like the most gratifying or most rewarding part about being married?
The most challenging part about being married, I would say, is having to die to yourself.
Mm.
Because one day, Bishop was doing a wedding, and he's done weddings, so many weddings. So he was doing a funeral maybe a couple of days before. So when he got to the wedding, he started doing the liturgy of a funeral. And then he caught himself like, "Oh, wait a minute!" But he goes, "Wait a minute. Technically, this is a funeral because you are dying to yourself.
Oh, wow.
You got to die to yourself to become for you and your spouse to become one."
Yes.
So in the beginning, learning to like everything I do now, I'm considering somebody else
Yep. And everything.
in everything. I'm not just, oh, I'm gonna go hang out with the boys and just get up and go. Like, no, I'm checking in, and it's not like, people may say that kind of sounds crazy. Like I have to check in. It's not like I'm asking for permission, but I'm being considerate to let her know, like, hey, these are my plans. What are your plans? How can we make sure our plans work together?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, constantly, burying yourself, your way of thinking, your habits that may offend the other person or irritate the other person, constantly putting those things, burying them, and it only works when both sides are doing it.
Right.
So where the imbalance comes in marriage is when one person is submitting and the other person isn't. But if both people are
Mm.
constantly doing it, that's going to be a recipe for success.
Recipe for success, and creates, I was going to say creates so much ease, but I know like it's like we said, it's not always, difficult, not always easy. There are challenges, but when both partners are actually committed to one another and committed to making it work, like we said, it does create a certain ease and a certain peace that flows with it. So then what
Right.
actually is the most rewarding part then?
That I get to share life, the good and the bad, with one person.
Yeah.
So when I met, no, when I started dating Ashley, a few weeks after I lost my job.
Mm.
So most of the time in our relationship, I was unemployed. I'm looking for work, but I was unemployed. I had just, I moved to Lynchburg, had all of these plans, and I lost my job actually because I took 2 weeks off the fast.
Wow.
So when I came back, they were like, "Oh, you used all your vacation time." That I did want to leave, so that is true. But they basically let me go right after the fast. So
Yeah.
now I'm questioning, okay, was this a God move? Did I really hear God in this? And working in entertainment, making good salary, to now being unemployed and having to sell pretty much all of my things to make ends meet. It was definitely a challenging time. But it takes the sting out of those moments when you have somebody to share it with.
Yeah.
Somebody that you can be the real you. It's a safe place.
Mm.
That's what I would say. Having a safe place with a person where if I have a great day, she's the first person I want to call and talk about it. If I'm having a crazy day, she's the first person I want to call and talk about it. And knowing that, she'll give me strong advice. She's not impressed by me. She's not looking at Pastor Marvin. She's not looking at accolades. She's looking at Marvin. She knows me, and she knows exactly what to say, when to say something, sometimes when not to say something, because women like to talk all the time. But
I mean, it's true. It's true.
they always got something to say. But I will say this: for the most part, she's pretty much right.
Yeah.
So having that safe place that you have a safe place with God, that you can go to God about everything. And in a sense, in marriage, the right marriage, you have a glimpse of what that relationship with God is in your spouse, where you can have that safe place where you can go and be transparent and be the real you.
That's so good. That's really good. I want to piggyback off of kind of what you said. And I think it's funny how like your story and even like me and Mike's story kind of parallels each other. Because when I was here, I had just got out of a super crazy bad relationship, and that's when I decided to move back here because I was actually in DC. Like I said, I was like, after I graduate, I'm leaving. I ain't gonna be here long, so I did. I went back to DC for about a year and a half. And was in a crazy relationship, and of course, it was long distance until I moved back there. Ended terribly, came back here because I was like, okay, you know what? I'm coming back here. I'm gonna be in school. I'm gonna focus. I'm gonna do all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was single for about 2 years until I met Mike. And I gave him such a hard time because I was first of all, that was probably one of the longest times I've ever been single in my life. And
Right.
so I was in a space where I was really finding who I was and getting comfortable with myself. And then for him to come out of nowhere, I'm like, why are you here? What do you want from me? Like, at
Uh-huh.
this point, like, you have to be a super great person to mess up this piece because I'm not feeling it at all.
Right.
This is like, yeah, I don't know what to expect from you. But he was very patient and very persistent. And it was after a while, and of course, I always have to tell this part. He actually worked up the nerve to ask me for my number, and I'm like, yeah, no, you can have my Snapchat. And I think that was probably after maybe 3 months.
My Snapchat.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you can have my Snapchat. You can be connected, but not all the way connected, because I'm probably going to end
Right.
if we're being honest. But then, long story short, we ended up going on, our first date after about 6 months of persistence and just seeing each other in passing because he was delivering to a restaurant that I was actually working at. So we'd see each other often.
Mm-hmm.
And he was never, I guess, pushy about anything. And I think that's what kind of drew me in, is that he was patient. He allowed it to be, the ball to be in my court the entire time. But then so long going into, further down the line, once we actually, started dating, it was insane because I lost my job. And then a week later, he
Okay.
lost his job.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
you said you lost your job and you were unemployed. Because I was like, oh my goodness, this is like the same story almost. But it was in that moment where, I got to see, where we kind of got to see who each other truly were. They say you
Right.
don't really know a person until, I guess it has something to do with money. When a person is angry, you don't really know who they are. And one thing that I can say is that he has always been extremely consistent, like in every scenario all across the board. When he's angry, he's actually the person where I'd be the one yelling and he wouldn't raise his voice. He wouldn't curse at me or anything. He'd be talking and I have to check myself like, okay, wait, he's talking to me. This is new.
Right.
So now I have to get together.
Right.
And even in this scenario where we both lost our jobs, we both stepped up. We, found work that we could. We hustled, and it was never a strain on like our actual love for each other. And we never took that out on each other, and that opened my eyes
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And part of me feels like I knew he was going to be my husband before he knew I was going to be his wife. I have to ask him. I really
Okay.
don't know. I'm just assuming.
Okay.
Because like I said, it was in those moments where I'm like, this guy is patient. He was always patient in the beginning. He's patient now. And
Right.
then to answer my question about the most challenging part, I think the most challenging part in our marriage so far has been still finding ways to grow together, if that makes sense. Like, so you are committed and we're doing this, but constantly learning and relearning who your partner is
Mm-hmm.
and still having that stable foundation. Because like I know me, like I've been probably 3 or 4 different people in the past 6 years. Like he hasn't
Right.
been same wife, same girlfriend or anything for a while. And he's been pretty consistent. He has like a very like slow, gradual growth, but it's easy to catch on to. Me, I'm just like wildfire. I'm all over the place. Um,
Right.
and I think that the most challenging part has been how do we continue to find our flow and find our stride, even with me becoming a new creation and you growing
Mm-hmm.
a new person? And how do we continue to make sure that, we match, or that, that we're continuing to be who we are to each other, regardless of the growth in our minds or the growth in our careers or anything else. And I
Right.
think the most rewarding part has been finding that we still grow together, and also
Yeah.
waking up every day knowing that your partner is just as committed as you are to making it work. Um, you guys are equally committed to making it work no matter what it looks like, and not necessarily in, that toxic way, like where people think you got to ride or die through all of like the craziness. But
Right.
again, the growth and through the years, because you're not, life is forever changing. It's
Yeah.
change, but it's always going to change. So you have to be able to roll with it and still have something solid at the same time. And I think having a healthy marriage and a healthy partner is the actual solid part that keeps you grounded throughout it all.
Yeah. When you said about that's the biggest challenge is uh, paraphrasing, the biggest challenge is how we are constantly evolving and we're still trying to connect. It's like love is a discovery. And as we're discovering ourselves, our partner has to be committed to continue to discover us. Like you said, you're like, I'm 4 different people, over the marriage. And it is a challenge, but it's probably the beautiful thing. I think a lot of the reasons some people divorce is because they're stuck on knowing the person at that moment and not think there's anything after this. So they're cheating themselves because they're seeing the person maybe in the worst moment of their life or
Yeah.
in that season where they're struggling. But there's a tomorrow, and what does tomorrow bring out of that person? What does we could be one moment away where God shifts everything, and same thing can be in our partner,
Yes.
and some people just give up too early.
Too early. That's the big part. And I know this is kind of different too, but after I had, my baby girl Zara, after I had her, it was in that moment, like the postpartum phase, where I was like, I see exactly why most couples don't make it after having a baby. That
Mm-hmm.
was really, really eye-opening for me. And
Yeah.
because not only are you changing and your entire life has changed because now you have another life you're responsible for, but it was just challenging in a sense of like understanding what your partner is going through, and even understanding yourself what you're going through. Because like we can read all the things in the world about postpartum, but one, for a while it wasn't talked about enough, but it's also one of those things that you have to see for yourself because everyone's journey looks different. So when you're in it, in the thick of it, it's like, oh, have mercy. Like, what is this? And then the person that you knew who you were, like who you were before the baby, now you have no idea who you are. And then your identity becomes wrapped in being a mom and catering to this little life because this is, what you're supposed to do. And I think the biggest struggle with postpartum is being out of touch with yourself so much so that you can't even find that relation to your partner anymore. There's a better way to say that. God help me to say that. But not knowing who you are plays a big role, period, in
Right.
a relationship and being in a marriage.
Yeah.
You lose that identity even after having a baby. And now your partner doesn't even recognize you because it's like, you're absolutely not the same, both physically and mentally and emotionally.
And you can't communicate it.
And you can't
Because you
communicate.
don't know what to
You
communicate.
don't know either.
Right.
Exactly. So it's easier, like you said, people give up too quickly. They give up too easily. But being able to make it through to the other side of that has been also really rewarding. So I read this book, and I was probably about 14 when I read this book. I've said it on my podcast numerous times. I was always the kid who read like self-help books. I was never an entertainment reader at all. So I'm reading this book about love at 14. And it's called The Sum of Love, a new way of looking at marriage. I mean, I was always into psychology major, all those things. I wanted to be a marriage and family counselor, if we're being honest.
Okay.
So I read the book and it was so insightful. But as I'm going through life from 14 to obviously now, it wasn't until in my marriage where I was able to, pull what I read from that book out of the archives. And that's what helped me to realize, oh, wait, this is what the book was talking about. This was the biggest challenge in the marriage is, relearning who your partner is. So the basis of like, there should never be a dull moment in your marriage. And not because, you're spicing things up, but it should never be a dull moment because your partner, you're constantly relearning who your partner is. And a lot of people now, they see marriage as a dead end. They see marriage as okay, got the ring, boom, I gave her a ring, we're married now, that's the end of my life, that's the end of the road, this is it, like you said earlier. Like this is all that there is. But I believe fully that like when you get married, it's actually when the real journey actually begins.
Yeah.
Really is the fun part. It's like, I mean, and if you're competitive, look at it like that. It's like, how committed can I be? How great of a partner can I truly be, to my spouse? And, just it's so much to learn and it's so much to know. And as life continues to change and you and your partner continue to go through seasons and different seasons of life, there's always going to be something new to discover and uncover about love and the way that you love and the way that your partner loves. I have a completely new revelation about what love actually is and what it actually looks like.
We like to say in the church, don't get stuck on an old method when God is doing a new thing. And it's the same thing in marriage. We talk about the 5 love languages. It might start out as one, but then in a couple of years, you still trying to buy her gifts. And she's like, wait a minute, I just want your time. You know, it could be all, and it could be all of them, but you have to constantly be committed to learning the other person. um I've learned the power of pivoting in marriage. So about maybe it had been 3-4 years within the marriage, Bishop asked me to become an assistant pastor at the church. Right, never my desire, never talked about ministry. I go to my wife and tell her. She she got up outside. She got up, walked outside the room, didn't talk about it for 2 weeks. And then when she finally did, she said, "I don't know if I would have married."
I said she left you on red.
Yeah, she sure did. She said, so when she finally talked about that, she said, "I don't know if I would have married you if I knew you were going to be a pastor. I never wanted to marry a pastor because I know what that life brings." I'm the naive one because I didn't really grow up in church like that. So she grew up in church. All of her family are pastors and first ladies and so forth. So, from her experience, she saw what comes with it. And she could have gave up. She could have gave up and said, okay, or it's either you take this and I leave. But she decided to stick it out. And I think we've both been blessed because of it. So we plan out, just like in life, we plan out what we want our life to look like, and in marriage, we probably plan out what we want our marriage to look like. But you got to be willing to embrace those God detours. They all work out, but in the moment, wait a minute, that's not what it looks like. This doesn't look like my destination. This doesn't look like the way to get to where I'm trying to go. I feel lost here. But if God is in it, you got to stick it out and it'll be worth it.
Absolutely. And that's honestly, truthfully, where like the refreshing, I guess, revelation of marriage and love came from, is when I personally, decided to walk with God and grew closer to God myself. Just, within the last year and a half, that's what really opened my eyes to what it was supposed to look like. Marriage is a partnership, but it's also not talked about enough that marriage is a lot of servitude. Like you said, you have to be willing to, die to yourself for you and your partner to become one. How does the flow work is when both partners, when you're serving your partner serving you, no one's cup runs empty. And it's going to be an equal exchange all the time. And I think that's where we get tripped up too, is like, I know some days I just don't have it. I don't have it at all. And Mike has no problem putting up the 80% while I'm only giving 20. And he has his days, it's vice versa. You have to be willing to pour a little more. But if you're both constantly in a posture to serve each other, then on those days where someone is running low, you have a little more to give, to
right.
And that's been a beautiful eye opener as well. It's constantly having to get out of like a selfish place, constantly having to get out of a what about me and start asking what about you? How are you? What do you need? And most people go into relationships these days to fill their own cup, not looking to fill the other person's cup. And not necessarily like, intentionally, but it's just that subconscious thing that we have is like an unhealed person. They go into a new relationship. They're like, oh my gosh, yes, I feel so happy. Like, this is great. Meanwhile, they have these unspoken expectations for this person to heal them or to fix them. And when it doesn't work out as they thought it would, then all of a sudden, like, oh, you're this and you're that, and this isn't going to work for me because X, Y, and Z. It's a posture of what can I receive versus how can we serve each other?
Right. Yeah.
So when people start looking at it like that, I think there'll be a lot more success stories in marriage as well.
Yeah, people want to come in relationships incomplete and expect that person to make them whole, and you have to come in whole. Because then you're bringing baggage, and you're expecting that person to fulfill something that really only God can fulfill in your marriage.
Yeah.
And
I think that's something that I mentioned in I had a podcast episode last Tuesday where I was talking about being healed enough, right? So let's say a person is not 100% whole before they meet, their person. Because I like to say that I was healed enough when I met Mike, healed enough to know when I'm in the wrong, healed enough and mature enough to actually correct myself. And so by that, I mean, if I went into the new relationship still completely unhealed from before, then I would have thought something was wrong with Mike. When I decided to argue and raise my voice and he was talking, I would have, translated that to, oh, you don't care because you're not getting as, loud and passionate as me. You don't care.
Right.
I'm done with this. But I was healed enough to know, like, okay, I'm yelling because that's what I was used to in my past relationship. And you're talking, and people who love each other should be able to talk things out and not have to yell and bite each other's heads off. So I wasn't like completely whole. I was still very much learning. And that's another thing. You have to be open to, continuously learning and correcting yourself. We always correct outside of ourselves, when a lot of the things that we try to correct outside of ourselves can be corrected if we correct ourselves first and show up differently. And so I was healed enough to recognize those things.
And I think a lot of times our relationships are parallel to our relationship with God. Oh, yeah. And one thing we may get in trouble in is as soon as something goes wrong, we want to critique the other person. When a lot of times it's God really saying, look at yourself. Yes. And before you go and address your spouse, what is it that you could have done different? What is it that, and majority of the time, that's a reflection of how we're treating God. It's so many parallels.
I asked myself that question last year. It was constantly, it's like, what could you have done different? What did you do to play a role in this? What could you have said differently? How can you handle this situation? But once God really started pressing that on me, he made that like a burden to look at myself first. Like anytime I felt myself getting irritated or bothered about something, God will always be like, okay, here's one of those moments. Let's work through it. Those teaching moments. What could you have done? And when you really think about that and really digest it, it brings a certain sense of humility as well. So it's like now when you go to address the person, you're not coming from an ego, I'm always right type of standpoint. And the conversation even flows a lot smoother because it's like, okay, I just want to tell you, about how I feel about this. I know that I could have done X, Y, and Z. Or half the time, by the time God finishes helping you correct yourself, it doesn't even need to be a conversation had because it was you the whole time. I aim to.
Oops, sorry, Siri. Yeah.
I just thought that was amazing how transformative just those questions are.
We first few years of our relationship was rough. Especially when it came to handling confrontation. And we finally came to the point where we said, before we get into this discussion, we're going to pray together. Because when we did that, not only are we inviting God in the conversation, it sobered us up and put us in more of a spiritual foundation where we're coming from a spiritual place, because it's harder to cut somebody out when you bring God in. It's harder to attack when you're saying, okay, God, guard my lips, you be glorified at the end of the day. This is not my enemy. I'm not sleeping with the enemy. This is the person that I love. This is the person I choose to love, and we want the best out of this. So let me handle this with the fruit of the Spirit. Let me handle this the way you want me to handle it. And that helped out a lot. That helped our discussions not to be as heated.
That's so good. Yeah. That's so good. And definitely about the part when you said oftentimes our relationships are a reflection of our relationship with God. That is 100% true. Because, and I said this in another episode, don't remember which one it was, but it's like I can look back over every single relationship I've ever had, and not just like a romantic relationship, but even like friendships. I can look back on every relationship and I can remember where I was with God at that time. And each one was an exact parallel, to each other. And so as I grow deeper in relationship with God, I'm seeing so many, it's the same thing. It parallels to where I am with God now in all of my relationships and all of my friendships, because the same qualities in the same way that you approach God, and in the same way that God even loves and approaches you, like how God loves you unconditionally, how he gives you so much grace when he could give you so many lashes instead. Like
Right.
the way that he loves and the way that we have to, the way that we learn to love him in return, it's so easy to transfer that onto other people, because it's like when they do something wrong, it's like God's first reaction is not going to be to yell at me. So why would that be my first reaction? God
Right.
is a God of peace and a God of love and a God of grace. And that's how I
Mm-hmm.
approach this situation as well. Um, and I do find it easier to be in relationship with God. It's easier to handle, the relationships in your life. So what would you, I guess, a word of advice or encouragement, like for those who are, I guess, looking for love,
Mm-hmm.
and even advice and encouragement for those who are, already married? What would
Okay.
your advice
If looking for love, this is gonna sound old school,
be?
and I don't consider myself necessarily like an old school church person because I didn't grow up in it. I'm kind of learning things as we're going. But a principle that I took and I applied to my marriage was after the first date, I went to my pastor and asked him. Um, I said, well, first I asked him, what is a good age difference between a man and a woman? And he said 8 years. And I'm exactly 8 years older than Ashley.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
said, okay, well, there's a young lady I'm interested in, but I would like to get your blessing. And I told him, and he laughed because he said he would have never put us together. But he says, I know both of you guys very well, and you have my blessing. Um, so especially when you're starting out early,
Yeah.
getting that blessing from your spiritual covering, your parents. Um, it's funny how we'll trust our leaders to pour into us on Sundays. We'll trust them to speak prophetic words over our lives, but then sometimes we don't trust them to ask them about, okay, well, person I want to spend the rest of my life with, because we're scared they're gonna say that's not the one. Even my mother, every girl that I brought to the house, and some that she loved, some she hated, but even the one that she really, really loved, she said, I like her, but she's not the one.
Yes, that is so amazing.
And the only thing she said about Ashley was she didn't think it was the right time, but she never said she's not the one. She thought I was getting married too early,
Oh, okay.
because for her, I wasn't, I had just got a job, she's thinking financially, things like that, which obviously she had a point. um, you know, which I don't regret how we did it, but I understand where she's coming from.
Yeah.
So yeah, including the person or the people that you consider your accountability to have their blessing, because they can see further than we can. And in the early stages, we're looking at the looks, we're looking at um, what do we have in common, blah, blah, blah. They can see further,
Yes.
and trust in that voice. Um, it can save you a lot of time, it can save you a lot of heartache, it can save you a lot of money. Um, so yeah, and besides that, just get to know the person, ask the question, and don't rush.
Don't
And when I
rush.
say that, don't rush on the intimacy side.
Yeah.
One, we already know it's biblical, but two, you complicate it and you cloud your judgment. Um, the old worldly ideology of you have to try it out before you commit to it. It's a world ideology. It's not true. It's not true. Um, growing up, we used to hear, I used to hear men say, "Oh yeah, you'll get tired with the same person." It's not true. You do it God's way, you won't get tired of a person. We talked about how you discover a person. The person is never the same, and that's in every aspect of the relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah, don't involve God in it. Get your insight from your spiritual accountability and do it His way. Is what I would say for somebody starting out. For a married couple, I would say, keep discovering. keep discovering, keep dating, keep finding ways to keep it fresh.
Curiosity, awe, and wonder in your partner. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing me and my wife say every year, we're gonna take a vacation with our daughter, family trip, but we're also gonna take a vacation just us. You know, I've met married couples. They were like, "Yeah, I haven't. We haven't been on a trip together in 10 years because of our kids." And that's great. But then what happens is once the kids move out, you're discovering who are you outside of being a mother? Who are you outside of being a father? We got the kids out. I now don't even know who you are.
Right.
So keep dating, keep learning each other. Don't ever feel like you got that person. Same way we should never feel like we understand God and we got the full revelation of who God is. No, we keep going in the journey, we keep discovering who He is. He shows us another side of Him, and it's the same thing in our relationships. There's so many things that are happening in my marriages now that I never imagined would have happened, or I would have learned, or I would have seen this side. Even now, we do a lot of business together. I'm seeing a whole other side of her. And another thing, and I'll leave it at that. Opposites really do attract.
Okay, can we talk about that briefly? Because I do respect
Yes,
your time. I respect your time, and I know you're probably going to have to go soon, but we have
I'm
to,
good.
because that is, again, another parallel that your marriage and my marriage has, because we've discussed it before about how opposites attract. So go ahead with what you were going to say, and I'll follow up.
A lot of times when people are looking for somebody, they're looking for somebody like them. I know for me, when I was growing up, my ideal woman, she was gonna be Caribbean. I'm Caribbean. She was gonna like the music I like. She was gonna like the food I like. The movies I like. Like all of it was gonna be like, bam. This is my best friend that I can rock with, and we can do everything together because we just see everything the same way.
All the same things, yeah.
All the same things, right? But two alike people can't produce much. It has to be two opposite people that really can produce more. So why I say opposites attract, and this is why I think in the early years marriage is challenging, because God brings two people that are very different. I'm more outgoing. My wife is more an introvert. I have a big idea. She's more like, okay, let's work out all the details. All of these different things, they conflict in the beginning because we're trying to figure each other out. But once it comes together, it's powerful. I think Neo said it best. I'm a movement by myself, but we're a force when we're together. but it's so true. If you're starting a company, you want to hire people that have skills that aren't your skills. I may start a company, but I need somebody that understands accounting. That may not be my skill. Do I hire somebody that on the same level as me? Or do I hire somebody that this is what they do? But together, our diversity and our gifts forms that great company. And you got to embrace the differences, because I think God uses those differences to really make one great marriage, together. And when you are unified with somebody that God has for you, it's a powerful force. It's a powerful force.
Man, that is awesome. I was going to follow up, but I feel like you pretty much covered that. I was going to say, my husband and I, we definitely are. We are opposite as well, but it has never worked more perfectly. And that's just such a great thing, because when we're looking for that partner, we try to find someone just like us. And I'll be honest, I don't know if I would want somebody like me. And that's not
me neither. I thought I did, but no.
And that's not like a shot at myself, but with my ambition, my drive, like my relentlessness, I don't know. I can't even imagine being in the position that I'm in now. So like if I was relentless and ambitious and I had a husband who has the exact same drive and passion, we're both going for the things that we want. I don't even know how that would work for us, like in parenthood, like like with our daughter. I don't know how it would work with like upkeeping the household much. There's so many different dynamics to where I literally cannot even see myself in a household with myself. I would drive
Right.
my insane. So
Right.
to my husband for also putting up with me.
Mhm. I'll give you an example. What I wanted to start a t-shirt company. I had an idea. I was like, I want to start t-shirts. I mentioned that idea to my wife. Literally a week later, she comes out and she has the whole website,
Oh wow.
created the whole system. You know, if it was up to me to do that,
Yeah.
it would have taken 6 months.
Mhm.
But her mind is there. Her mind operates like that. Her mind can put those little things together. I can come up with the ideas. She can implement the strategy.
Yeah,
And that was an example for me. And I feel like God telling me, like, this is another reason why I brought you together. That's another thing I think about marriage, is that the more we go, the deeper we go in it, the more and more we realize why allowed us to be together.
absolutely.
We thought it was just this Hollywood love, this and that's a part of it, but there's more to it.
It's so
There's
much,
more to it.
especially when you, like you said, when you realize it's like my partner was truly created, like for me
Mm,
for such a time as this. And when you catch the full revelation of that, it's like, wow, God, like you are intentional in all your ways. The
yeah,
intentionality is mind blowing because
yeah,
it's, and I think that having a partner who is opposite, it highlights our weaknesses, which in turn should also breed more humility in the
yeah.
marriage as well. Because it's like, oh, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe there are some things I'm not, 100% great at. Maybe I should bring it
Right,
down a notch or two. Um,
right.
and if you let it be, just that, like you're strong where I'm weak versus, something that has to conflict, it creates a force. It really
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
Oh, this is so good. This is so good. Thank you so much for
Thank you, Kayla.
our All About Love segment for February. I pray that it is insightful for so many, which I know that it will be, because again, God is very intentional about everything. And man, I'm just going to sit and digest this because this was a really great conversation. And I appreciate you, Pastor Marvin, for sharing space with us, for being authentic with us as well, and just for being you.
Thank
And
you, Kayla.
shout out
Well,
to,
I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing with this, and getting to know you. I would say in the past couple years, and just seeing the anointing on your life, and I think there's a lot of great things in store for you.
oh man, all right now, don't make me cry. I was doing real, I was doing really good.
just lift your hands and receive.
I receive it. Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Okay, last thing is I usually give homework to the people, and I questioned whether or not I was going to give homework for the All About Love segment. I wanted people more so to just receive it. Um, but do you have anything that someone could work on like right now in real time if they're in pursuit of a partner or if they already have a partner? What is something that you would say they could work on or you would
For
encourage them to work
the person that is pursuing a partner, I would say the list that they created of this is what my partner has to be or has to have, I would say rip it up.
it to shreds?
Rip it to shreds, and be open, because most of the time, when God answers our prayers, it's not in the way that we expect.
Yeah.
And I think some people will stay single longer because they're looking for this person, and God, a lot of times the person could be right there, but you're looking for something else, and your biggest blessing is could be right in front of you. Um, and work on themselves. Work
Mhm.
on themselves. Like I said, you want to get rid of as much baggage as you can. You're not going to be perfectly whole, but you want to get rid of as much baggage. You want to make sure that you are completely divorced from previous relationships, previous experiences, because you don't want to bring that. It was never God's intention for you to bring that stuff into your relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for the married people, I would say, um, plan your next date. And when you plan this date, don't don't bring your kids. Don't talk about work. Don't talk about church. Just talk about each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rediscover.
Rediscover. Do something. Don't go to the same restaurant or the same typical date. Do something completely different.
Completely different. Yeah. You've been married 15 years. If you've been married for 2 years, do something different. That
Do
is
something different.
great. I love that.
Yeah.
Food, try different food, try different things and figure out who your partner is in the
Yeah.
now. Um, and I'll
Oh,
piggyback. Go ahead.
last thing, and pray for your spouse.
Mm,
Pray for your spouse.
yeah.
When you pray for your spouse, God will give you insight to, okay, Kayla's having a bad day. It's deeper than today. God will give you hints on this is what to pray about. This is what the issue is about. This is how you should address it. Yeah, if you it's like your cheat code. If his wisdom will be your cheat code, and it'll give you a prophetic advantage in your marriage.
That is so true. And that's actually been a shift in my prayers. Like last year, um, praying for my spouse, but also praying that God give me a fresh revelation of how to serve my spouse better. Because again,
Mm-hmm.
in like disagreements or pointing the finger, even in prayers, we tend to, Lord, change this person or, fix this person, not exactly in those words, but you know what I mean? But also it's like, okay, God, while you're working on this person, while you're doing whatever you have to do, in this person's life, how can help me to be a vessel and a catalyst for you to do the work that you need to do as well. Like, I know that if you give me, better ways or deeper ways to serve my partner, whatever you have planned is already, it's going to manifest. And
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing extra that I have to do other than show up, for my partner in the way that you called me to show up.
Right.
Because instead of like, I'm waiting for God to change you. I'm waiting for God to change you because I've been praying again, still
Right.
on yourself, because I noticed a dramatic difference when I started to show up differently.
Mm.
When I started to show up differently and serve differently, it again created a different response. Just like, the same saying is like, when you do the same thing, you're going to get the same thing. But if you do something different, you'll receive different results. And it's the same thing in marriage as well. So I guess the piggyback.
God, God loved us into redemption.
Oh, Jesus.
It wasn't, when you think about it, it wasn't the sermon about I'm sending you to hell that probably drew you to him. It was a sermon. It was the message that basically said, look, I know everything you did. I know everything about you. I still love you, and I'm gonna love you through it. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing sometimes with it's the same thing in our marriage when we're in situations where maybe the other person isn't, bringing their full effort. Um, yeah, you can get resentful, you can get spiteful, or you can love that person through it. And love that. What's the best way to say it? I don't know, but you know what I'm saying.
I got
I'm
what
done.
you're saying. It truly is,
I'm
though.
done. We've talked too long. I'm done.
Like we could keep going, but definitely like my advice, across the board, whether you're in pursuit of a partner or already married, continue, working on yourself. And by working on yourself, working on the qualities that best serve your partner, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like just continue working on yourself in a way that like a better you also breeds a better marriage. A better you will, transfers to your partner and communicates different things to your partner as well. Work on,
Yeah.
those new revelations of love, or catch a new wind about your partner. Again, the message that Bishop preaches, like, it's not that you need a new thing, but in paraphrasing, of course, it's not that you need a new thing. You just need a new way of looking at, currently where you are, a new way of looking at your current situation. And when you're married for a long time, or you've been with a person for a long time, you tend to show up as the same person, or looking at them as the same person. And sometimes you need to catch a fresh revelation of who your partner is and the relationship that you guys have, and not just, you know, seeing your spouse in passing, roommate style relationship because you feel like you know them. Continue to
Right.
keep curiosity about them.
When Bishop talked about that part in the message, I promise you, a few minutes before I wrote in my notes that God is going to give you a revelation of something or someone that's already been there, but is going to give you a new revelation about that. I think about Moses. I've been in this mindset in this chapter, Exodus 14, about when the children of Israel about to cross the sea, the Red Sea, and the Egyptians are following them. And then they turn to Moses and they say, Moses, what are we going to do? You brought us out here to die. And Moses, says, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Then he cries out to God, and God's like, why are you crying out to me for? Use the rod. Use the staff that's in your hand. And earlier, it's in Exodus 4 where God gives him a revelation of that rod that's in his hand and says, throw it to the floor, and it turns into a serpent. And he says, you're going to be able to use this rod for miracles, signs, and wonders. So the whole thing that, he's crying out for, like, God, what do we do? And God's like, wait, it's in your hands. You know what I mean? Like, I gave you a revelation. And the thing about the rod, it's been with him the entire time. It's only, and there's certain things in our lives, and even like in this new season, we're talking about God do something new, and God is like, wait a minute. And it goes very much to what Bishop said yesterday. It's, what you're looking for, you have it. Maybe you don't have a revelation of what it is yet, and God hasn't anointed it yet, but like my wife, she's been there in front of me for years, but it was just that one moment that God was like, this is your revelation. This is your wife.
Man. Oh, I love that. I also want to point out too, those who are in pursuit of a partner, just going off of this episode, neither me or Pastor Marvin were in pursuit of a partner.
No.
Actually, we were not looking, we were not actively looking or actively in pursuit of a partner. We were actually serving our now. We were serving where we were at that time. We were focused on our assignment. We were focused on, what we were doing at that time. And God brought our partner or our potential partner into our life when we were just focused. I mean, we weren't really
so much so. I remember literally having this prayer with God a few weeks before when I told God, my desire is to have a wife. But if that's not your desire for me, I will be content. I'm not saying I won't long for one. I won't say there's certain days I won't be like, man, I wish I had a wife. But if your desire for me is not to have a wife, to be single all my life, I'll embrace it. I'll run with it. And when I had that moment with God, it literally a few weeks after, it was like, well, I heard what you said, but I do got a plan for you. But I had to see where your heart is.
Yeah. Oh, that's what it is. I have to see where your heart is and your true intentions and desire behind why you even want a spouse or why you even want a partner. Do you want a partner because you're lonely? Do you want a partner because you want them to fix you? Like, what is your intention? Oh,
yeah.
And
don't look thirsty on social media looking for a spouse.
Yeah, because
that's what we're saying
on that.
Right.
What's your intention behind it? Yeah, sometimes it really is. It truly is your heart posture as to why you're not receiving the things that you long for, and or it could just very well be that it's not in God's cards for you. However, you work on yourself, you work on that intention and your heart posture, continue to grow closer with God, and just allow him to take the lead. Just allow him to take lead in your life,
100%,
in everything. And we gonna end on that, y'all.
All right.
Because I got you. We can keep going on this, but we have the entire rest of February to get more wisdom and more insight on what love and marriage actually looks like, or just being in relationships in general. There's so much more in store for you guys, so we're not going to load you down on the first episode. But you guys just follow up with that homework, and I will talk to you guys next week.
Peace.